Hello, good morning, and welcome to this panel of the EU Industry Days 2021, where we're going to address the very topical issue from crisis to opportunity, digital solutions for a sustainable economic recovery. My name is Dan Michaels. I am the Brussels Bureau Chief of the Wall Street Journal. And for us, these are all very relevant topics. So I'm looking forward to this panel with great expectations. Before we dig in, I want to point out that we are using Slido, and we are posting questions. You can use the QR code there to get the questions, post your answers, responses, and after we have our panel discussion, we're going to return to this in the Q&A session and see what all of you think on the questions we're posing, and we'll open it up a bit for discussion. So, without more ado, I would like to introduce our welcome speaker, Dr. Hans-Martin Schneeberger, who is the president of CECIMO. Dr. Schneeberger.
Thank you, Dan. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues from industry, as president of CECIMO, the European Association of the Machine Tool Industries and Related Manufacturing Technologies, I am delighted to welcome you all to our conference in the framework of the EU Industry Days, focusing on digital solutions for a sustainable economic recovery. The coronavirus pandemic has tremendously changed the world as we knew it and caused a domino effect, leading to serious and interconnected crises. Though there is still much to endure, we should not forget that every crisis also brings new opportunities, and this one is no exception. The COVID-19 outbreak accelerated the implementation of digital solutions. As a consequence, Europe's reliance and recovery strategies have a digital perspective, and the future of our industry will depend on the investments in new technologies and digital skills, leading towards a successful digital and green transition. The European manufacturing industry plays an essential role in the long-term global response to the pandemic. The manufacturing sector has always been driven by innovation and technological change, and today it is ready to support the European recovery by creating new opportunities for the broader economy. The European machine tool sector is one of the most inventive, contributing to research and innovation in fields such as additive manufacturing, robotics, and artificial intelligence. A strong and competitive manufacturing sector should be a top priority for policymakers, as it plays an essential role in the European economic and technological development to avoid future economic hardships. This is the third time CECIMO has participated in EU Industry Days, and we are proud to speak on behalf of the advanced manufacturing industry in such an important forum and occasion. We continue to support and advocate an inclusive digital transformation. In that context, CECIMO is actively involved in the Industrial Forum, and we look forward to contributing to creating the favorable conditions for the manufacturing recovery. I would like to thank the European Commission for recognizing the importance of our sector and giving an opportunity to industrial stakeholders to discuss at this critical time the current industry needs and future challenges in the post-COVID period. Today's event will focus on the uptake of new digital technologies and their impact on a sustainable economic recovery. We will hear from frontrunners such as KUKA, Trump, EOS, as well as European standardization organizations CEN and CENELEC, and the Commission, how to ensure and maximize the benefits of digital technologies when it comes to sustainable economic recovery. Europe's manufacturing industry is home to the world's leading innovators and entrepreneurs and the driving force of our economic recovery. Therefore, the EU must use its momentum to support the European industrial ecosystem in becoming frontrunners in the field of sustainability and digitization. I'm looking forward to today's discussion on those important issues. Thank you for attention. Thank you for listening. Dan Michaels, turn over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Schneeberger. That was a great introduction for today's discussion, and we're going to have a lot to talk about. The irony of having a virtual conference on the topic of the uptake of new digital technologies wasn't lost on me in doing this, but it's a lot easier for us to talk digitally than it is for industry to move into the digital world. So I think that is a rich topic we're going to dig into now. And to start the discussion, I'd like to introduce Anne-Marie Sassens, who is Acting Head of Unit at DG Connect.
Thank you very much. Yes, I would like to talk today about how new technologies can help industries to recover from the crisis. And I had a presentation, and I don't know if it's possible to see the presentation. Yes, here it is. Yes, so the industrial ecosystems of Europe, they have, of course, suffered a lot of the crisis. If we think, for instance, about the tourism ecosystem, they have had no business at all because nobody could travel anymore. Or the retail ecosystem, also they suffered a lot because people could not go to the shop. So all these companies, they need to somehow adapt and use more digital ways of working in order to survive. And if there's one thing that we have seen is also that many of the companies, they have indeed quickly made a digital evolution. And somehow we could say that maybe because of the crisis, the way companies have been using digital has been really accelerated, and that maybe now we are 5 years ahead of what we would have been if the crisis would not have happened in terms of digital. But if we look at the manufacturing sector, there also, of course, they suffered a lot. There were disruptions in the value chains, in the supply chains. People could not go to the factory to produce the things that they normally would have done. So there was a lot of problems in that sector as well. But the slide that I show here, it shows how also the manufacturing sees how, for instance, modern technologies like artificial intelligence can really help them forward and make them more efficient, more productive, but also more sustainable. So if we look at the top 10 industrial use cases of artificial intelligence in manufacturing, then we see predictive maintenance as the first use case. So of course, this is very predictive maintenance. It helps to predict production processes better, to have not unexpected interruptions, but it will also really help for the sustainability of the whole processes, because if we can use machines longer, of course, there will be less waste, less CO2 production, and it will really help for the for the green transition as well, to better maintain all the machines that we have. The same for quality inspection and assurance. Of course, it's very important for the competitiveness of the company, but it's also very important for the Green Deal, because if you can get products in one time right, because of all your quality inspection procedures, you also produce less waste, and the resources will also be used more efficiently. So all these use cases, they will contribute to the competitiveness of the companies, but also to meeting the Green Deal. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, but you cannot do artificial intelligence applications if we don't have a lot of quality data. And luckily, of course, there are now, there's the Internet of Things, there are a lot of sensors around, and it's now quite easy and possible to collect a lot of data. But then what we also need to learn better as European industry is then how to store those data, but also how to analyze it with AI algorithms so that we can do these use cases that we saw on predictive maintenance. And I think many companies are experimenting with that. They apply that within their own production facilities, and that is looking all very good, and improvements will be made. But if we really want to meet the goals of the Green Deal, we need to go further to that, and individual optimizations of factories is not enough. We need also to optimize along value chains and among ecosystems of companies. And this can only happen if companies would also share their data with other companies. Of course, always on a voluntary basis and according to agreements, voluntary agreements that they have made among each other. But the sharing of data at the moment is not happening enough. And it's the ambition of our Commissioner Breton to really enable companies to make better use of their data, to become global players in the data economy. And therefore, he has also recently announced the Data Act with all actions on improving the data economy. Within the manufacturing sector, we concretely we are funding a project or several projects through Digital Europe program. We will invest around 20 million euros in projects which are data spaces that industry companies can use to share their data to optimize certain applications. And the applications that we have in mind is agile supply chain management, so that the companies together, they experiment with how to share their data so that they don't lose their secrets, and but they still share some of the data which can be used to optimize supply chain. And the same, another application that we are foreseeing is dynamic asset management and predictive or prescriptive maintenance. So this would really correspond to this #1 use case that was shown on the last slide. And then we would also like to see a data space for data sharing, for circularity, for recycling, and for remanufacturing. Because of course, if we want to go to recycling, we need to collect the data of around the products that are recycled from the design phase to the phase after the end of the life of the product. So this is something that we have in mind, and we would like really the manufacturing industry or several industrial ecosystems to benefit from these data spaces and to experiment with further data sharing, to be able to respond to the big challenges that we have ahead of us for the green and digital transition. Can we please go to the next slide? And then a second tool that we have available, or that we are setting up at the moment, it's a network of digital innovation hubs, and this one, it should help especially SMEs with their digital transformation, because we see that there are big difference in the uptake of digital between large and small companies. Only 25% of the SMEs are highly digitized, whereas for large enterprises, this is 62%. So this is really a very big difference. The technologies are available for everyone, but due to barriers and obstacles, the SMEs cannot take advantage of it. We also see big differences in sectors. So of the construction companies, only 11% is highly digitized. And then there are also big regional differences. In Greece, only 6% of the companies are highly digitized, whereas in Denmark, this is 53%. So big differences. Can you go to the next slide, please? So with a network of digital innovation hubs of 200 hubs, we are selecting them together with the member states. We want to be near every company and then help them with the challenges, overcome the challenges that they have in their digital evolution, make them aware about the possibilities, and then they can also experiment and test with these technologies. So we will have this geographical spread, but what we will also do at the same time, because every digital innovation hub that we will have a specialization, and these specializations, they can be related to sectors, and that way they can be related to ecosystems. We will also look at specific ecosystems, and with the digital innovation hubs that are specialized in that ecosystem, we will develop solutions that can also then help the SMEs in these ecosystems to adopt the new technologies. For instance, if we look at construction companies, we could have the digital innovation hubs that are specialized in construction work together, exchange best practices. What are tools that are available for the SMEs? How are similar companies in other countries using these tools so that they can see that, and that way they can get confidence and digitalize also themselves in the way they want. So this is what we foresee in terms of helping the industry recover from the crisis and make the best of the new opportunities that digital technologies can offer. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Anne-Marie Sasson. That was a great introduction to just how much is going to need to be addressed here and so much that's in play. Before we move to our next speaker, I want to draw everyone's attention to the Slido polling that's going on. There's a question out there. How do you convince countries that could potentially lose out, for example, on tax revenue, that an international tax solution is the way to go? So please offer your opinion on that. And you can also ask questions on Slido. There's a link just under the video that you should be able to pose your own question, as I see at least one person has. So we're now going to move towards industry. Our next speaker is Marie Langer, who is Chief Executive Officer of EOS from Germany.
Be part of a new era of manufacturing.
So good morning, everyone. I'm the second generation CEO of EOS, which my father founded more than 30 years ago in Germany. And we are the global technology leader in industrial 3D printing. And the video you just saw illustrates how we see the future of manufacturing. We at EOS believe that production in general needs to become more digital, decentralized, and flexible to adapt to ever-changing market requirements and customer needs, and additive manufacturing can perfectly adapt. So what do we mean with digital manufacturing? And you saw it a bit in the video already. Based on digital part data and digital processes, we help our customers to digitalize the entire supply chain and set up digital production facilities as part of our factory planning. So together with the customer, we determine which steps are necessary to set up and commission a digital production facility, analyze production requirements, define necessary KPIs, and assist with technology implementation. So setups are globally scalable and can be further automated when needed, all working towards the goal of low cost and high quality. And here, decentralized, or as we call it, distributed manufacturing, is really important as well. This uses a network of geographically dispersed, digitally connected facilities. So manufacturing can happen where it is needed. And there are plenty of advantages for our customers. Fast response time, increasing the flexibility of production, reduction of storage, warehousing, and shipping costs, more resilient and transparent supply chains, and sustainability effects. And it's a low-risk approach, a demand-driven, localized production, avoiding any pre-financing of products. And we could prove some great benefits recently. Once cross-border supply chains collapsed in course of lockdowns and economic standstill across the globe, the pandemic revealed critical weak spots in our globalized economies. So necessary medical equipment like face masks or ventilators became scarce goods with limited international availability and disrupted supply chains. Production factories came to a sudden halt when just-in-time deliveries became unreliable, resulting in massive economic and financial losses. For industrial 3D printing companies like EOS, however, it was an opportunity to demonstrate its potential on a broad scale. And the technology became one of the many heroes of this pandemic. In a matter of days, industrial 3D printers, a primarily made in Europe technology, stepped in where production lines stood still and provided necessary parts and equipment to help fight the pandemic and keep supply chains intact. So the technology could be used where it was locally needed for on-demand production of test strips, face shields, ventilators, and nasal swabs. Additive manufacturing closed gaps where conventional production of required medical products reached its limit due to disrupted supply chains. And we believe in team play, particularly in such a challenging situation. So we created the open online platform 3D Against Corona and a LinkedIn group to support the fight against Corona, providing relevant information, effective project examples, CAD data sets for free download, and immediate production via 3D printing. Our entire industry, customers and partners, were strong supporters during the pandemic. Customers from other industries, for example, automotive, were able to switch from AM production of classic production aids to components like respiratory equipment from one day to the next with the help of our flexible production technology. And 3D printing nasal swabs were actually a great example. AM Engineering, a high-performance AM engineering firm based in Spain, was able to manufacture 40,000 Spanish health authority certified nasal swabs for testing per day, allowing for decentralized on-demand production in Europe and North America. To come back to Europe's position and role and what we suggest from a 3D printing point of view. The pandemic has proven that Europe must not only become more sovereign in terms of digital technology and supply chains, but also rely on its own strength and intensively develop them. But in the past years, countries like the US or China were able to catch up very quickly, mainly due to heavy public investments in the sectors. So Europe needs to react now to prevent our leadership position in this technology from perishing in global competition like so many before. It is worthwhile to focus on industrial 3D printing for two reasons in particular. The first is flexibility. Just like during the first month of the pandemic, industrial 3D printing technologies allow for the adjustment of production within a very short time frame. The second is resilience. By regaining the ability to produce locally, European Union regains sovereignty vis-à-vis China and the US, and is creating great amounts of sustainability effects. And ladies and gentlemen, there's massive growth potential of industrial 3D printing technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie Langer. That was really interesting. And I have to say, personally, at the Wall Street Journal almost a year ago, we wrote several articles about the industry's role in the initial struggle against coronavirus, and spoke to some of your colleagues and others in the industry. It's really a fascinating subject, and our readers were very interested. Before we turn to our next speaker, we're going to look at the results of the first Slido poll. So it seems that on the question of how should policies support the adoption of sustainable digital solutions, the overwhelming, or by far the biggest response, the most popular response, was digital skills. It seems that that is indeed what people feel is important. So we're now going to post another Slido question, and that is, what are the most important factors in enabling technology innovation? So get your Slido hats on and address that question. And we will now turn to Christian Liedtke, who is Head of Strategic Alliances at KUKA in Germany.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. You know, the downside of such a great panel of true experts is always that when you're absurd, all relevant points have already been made. So I would like to add some remarks on cultural changes, on challenges and success factors. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic forced us all into our home offices. And guess what? Somehow it worked. We were able to successfully work from offsite. This was really new. And now we try to push the limits even a bit further. And we're trying to manage a wide range of company activities from our home office. While it works in some cases, so to give you one example, our company changed the entire travel management to a digital service. It lacks somehow in other fields, and where they are pushing the boundaries a bit, production being definitely one of them. But however, I mean, one of the positive effects, or is the positive effect of the pandemic, is definitely it increased the awareness of the importance of digitalization. And this cultural change now leads to more changes in our daily company life. I mean, workers now need to adopt these new technologies that are available, and they need to utilize and to value it, not fearing to actually being controlled by it. We somehow need to accept the truth data suddenly delivers and change our view of interpreting it. I mean, in the past, we always had the possibility to change results in a way that it actually showed the picture we wanted to impress. But now, if a machine, for example, is just producing half of the day, we should not see this as a failure, but we should see this as a potential for optimization. This somehow leads us to our challenges, and those are mainly cultural challenges, yes. Digitalization requires cooperation, and that starts within our companies. So, for example, in the past, production and IT have started their own initiatives, hidden in the dark, not telling the other about it. Now, this led to the sudden death of many of those initiatives. And digitalization now brings these world and competencies together. It requires that people are working closely together, because an IT department does not know the exact use cases the production will bring up. And the production has no clue on how to actually implement this within a complex framework. So one question will be, is actually who drives those challenges? Who drives those digitalization efforts? It is an integrative, company-wide project approach. It has to be led by the top management. It has to be wanted by the top management in order to be successful. And it needs to integrate all the people who are involved. Now, another major challenge is, of course, security. I don't mean to argue against security, but I'm constantly talking to people who refuse to share any kind of information about their machines in a secured cloud system or something like this. But in their private life, on the other side, they openly share private data or pictures of their last holiday experience or whatever in social media. So we have to overcome this somehow. We, like we heard in the first expert talk from Ms. Sassen, we need more companies who are willing to share information, and that's not the critical information. Basic information is the first step to actually lead to new changes there. Now, what are keys to a successful integration of digitization? First of all, we need to integrate all people involved. We need to look for the low-hanging fruits in those kind of projects to grow trust, so that with this trust we gain momentum to challenge the real tasks, the real important tasks. We somehow need to reduce complexity. I mean, easy to use will be one of the key success factors to gain acceptance in those kind of technologies, to utilize those technologies. And then we have to be honest, truly honest about our goals. Let's be realistic. I mean, if you're struggling to share information within your own company, you should not really realistically dream about exchanging data and complex value chains. And of course, this is our ultimate goal. I mean, this is where the true potential lies. And we shouldn't dream about marvelous KPIs. We've done this in the past. Digitalization will definitely lead us to the next level in production efficiency, but it won't cut our yearly costs by half or double our yearly savings like this. So let's be true and honest about what we can really achieve and go for the low-hanging fruits, start projects, start sharing data, include your ecosystems. That's your key to success.
Thank you very much, Christian Liedtke. That frontline perspective really brings this down to earth and gives a sense of what are the actual challenges ahead for managers. Now, before we move to our next speaker, we're going to look at the results of the Slido question. What we had was, what are the most important factors in enabling technology innovation? The top response was promoting sectoral and cross-sectoral partnership, but a close second was training and access to educational programs. We're now going to open up a new Slido question, which is, what should be the major focus of the revised EU industrial strategy? So put your Slido caps back on and tackle that one. So we're now going to move to Thomas Schneider, who is Managing Director of Research and Development at Trumpf, also from Germany.
Yes, thank you very much for giving the opportunity to speak to this amazing community. We think we have to come to our customers and help them to support their digitalization path. And for the first slide, please. We see that there are upcoming technologies which will help our customers to improve the way they do manufacturing. And for us, it's almost 80% of our customers are small and medium-sized companies, family-owned, or small companies with up to 100, 200 people. And one of the key challenges is supporting their material flow within their factories and supporting them on the way to manage the process chain more digital. And one of the technologies we see there is ultra wideband, which allows to track the material across the job floor, and then allow for better scheduling and therefore better improved material handling, improved technology, and the OEE of each machine. So one of the key things is to bring AI down to the shop floor, and there are good technologies available, and we have to partner with our customers, keep their pain points in focus, and accept, like the pre-talks, we have to accept that it is a journey for all of us. It's for the OEMs as well as for the customers, and we have to do it jointly together. And on the next slide, we also have to think differently in the machinery. It's in the past we focused on the product, we focused on the technology, and we had special services afterwards over the life cycle. We improved for sure our products on a regular basis, but we have never thought about it like an always on, continuously connected, a learning system for our customers to be connected, like in the automotive industry. This American company is doing this very perfectly, and I think it's a huge opportunity for us in the machinery business to support our customers with across the life cycle. And equipment as a service and other new business models allow to think differently about the relationship between customers, OEMs, and the different parts within the supply chain and within the manufacturing process. So from our side, it's now the starting point. It's technologically possible, but it's a transformation journey. And within the transformation journey, we think that in the middle of this, the people are involved. And on the next slide, shortly, and we can be sure that it's a win-win if we accept that AI is only the embedded system within our domain expertise. And we have to bring these things together within the mindset of our people, within the mindset of our companies, and as well in the technology transfer and the knowledge transfer between universities and companies and industry and the end customer. And I think it's this focusing on transferring and aligning both strengths, so the strengths from the customer with the strengths of the domain expertise of the OEM, including new partners, new teams, talents, providing AI and software skills to our products is a starting point of new ecosystems. And the initiatives in the EU with Gaia X and the things we have started within the crisis is a perfect starting point to drive this now forward. And I would like to close my remark with two statements I found in the net. On the next slide, please. So it's Alan Kay told that people who are really serious about software should make their own hardware. And I would like to invite the community to be trusting in the braveness of the European industry and of our ideas, so that people who are really serious about industrial AI, they should make their own machines and support their customers with beneficial algorithm and a better product offering, including the services. And then we will define the European way within these huge challenges between the US and the Chinese way. We should drive our own way, and I think we have the best things in place. Now we have to make them happen and do it step by step, jointly with our customers and within an ecosystem which we are currently building up. So thank you for the opportunity to give this remark here.
Thank you, Thomas Schneider. You've yet again taken us another level to the actual technology, and that's great because it really brings it to the front line. We're now going to move to our final speaker, who is Elena Santiago Cid, who is the General Director of CEN and CENELEC, dealing with the vital subject of industrial standards.
So good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for this invitation, especially to CECIMO, because we do believe that it is important to keep the standards visible, and this is a sector that machinery that is extremely involved and committed to European and international standardization. And we have heard a lot by the previous speakers. So I would like to start by saying that the pandemic, and this is something that has been also said by the president, has generated a terrible situation and exposed all of us, industry, but also as human beings, to circumstances that are unique in the modern era. I think that we all have seen the World Economic Outlook with the economy contracting, with a massive loss of workplace and closures. And this is really something that has triggered and made a lot of reflections. But as the president of CECIMO has said, this has also generated a lot of opportunities. And in particular, I must say that for the European standardization system, this has been a true test for everything related to the single market. But European standards have been confirmed as a key tool in supporting the single market. We have been supporting the market in very close cooperation with industry and with the European policymakers, making sure that the technical requirements that were requested by the national authorities to use and to move those goods that were so desperately needed to protect citizens and professionals were equivalent, so ensure fair competition in the market, enabling market transformation, green and digital, and I think we will elaborate more about that, and encouraging trust in consumers. And these are three major values of the European standardization system. I think this discussion is also very timely because we have just approved the CEN-CENELEC strategy 2030, so it's a 10 years term. It's meant to be extremely dynamic, and our vision here is to build a safer, more sustainable and competitive Europe through European and international standardization. We are convinced and we believe, and I think industry that is industry like you, those that are listening and those that organize this event, are convinced that we need a well-functioning European standardization system in order to get the best of a system that is unique in the world, because a system in which voluntary market-driven standards support European legislation and contribute to innovation-friendly legislation, reducing cost of compliance and administrative burden. It is a very interesting example, and other regions in the world are actually looking into this what we call the European model. So it is very important that the system works well. It is very important that there is an understanding of how the system works. And this is the best way to strengthen the single market, which is what we believe is going to be the great opportunity to get us out of this economic crisis, and will make the European economy more resilient. But how we make the best of this system, I think that sometimes it's not that obvious, and we need to make sure that the system is fully functional and enable our industry, our stakeholders, to remain active in the European standardization development, to help them to remain competitive in the global scene. I think some of the previous speakers have mentioned the importance of that. Sustainability goes hand in hand with this objective. Europe has been a leader in many international standards addressing sustainability requirements. And we need to keep that leadership at international level. For that, we need to be better coordinated, better organized, and to keep our industry motivated. So 3 elements that I would like to put on the table to keep Europe competitive and to strengthen the single market through European standardization. The first, and to me, one of the most important ones, continuous engagement of the European industry. So I mentioned that before, and we need experts that are willing and motivated to develop market-driven solutions to meet current and future needs, and to prepare actually our market and to anticipate market needs. So there are strategic choices for industry that are made through technical standardization, and that enable a functioning single market for a wide range of industrial goods and services, and indeed for the machinery sector. The second is that we need to work together. We need to work together, European policymakers and regulators, national policymakers and regulators, European industry, those that are actually putting the knowledge and the time and the resources in the standards development, and the European standardization and the national standardization bodies at the platform that enable the consensus making. This is extremely important. Now we are really determined to promote the new legislative framework. I think those that are familiar with how standards support European policies and legislation may be familiar also with this regulatory practice. It is essential that the principles of the framework are confirmed, safeguarded, promoted, not only for the traditional legislative acts, but also for the new digital acts that are addressing the digital economy. The machinery directive is going to be subject to a revision. It's going to become a regulation. We have got around 800 harmonized standards that need to be revised, and we need a smooth process that is dynamic, that is help us to timely deliver those solutions that the market need to help our industry to become more competitive. Finally, what is extremely important is that there's a leverage with the international standardization, because again, I think it was Marie Langer that mentioned before that the pandemic has really shown the importance of a global market access. And in that sense, it is very important to be able to leverage, because we have got agreements with the international standards organizations in CENELEC that if we master that relationship, if we are able to identify what are critical strategic areas where we have got the knowledge, where we are front runners in technology to influence international standardization developments, that will be a great gain for the European industry. And we don't want industry to be wasting their time looking for different places to develop standards. I think that the focus should be, let's have a good standard that can be applied, one standard accepted everywhere, and if it is possible, only doing one test against those requirements. So this is extremely important for a sector that is very global. 40% of the work that is carried in the sector is developed at international level. And as I mentioned before, there is a significant number of harmonized standards. Just to conclude, to make the connection also with the digital transition, because we are all facing a huge revolution in the system. We heard about the culture. Culture is extremely important also when we speak about standardization, and standards need to address the challenges of the digital market too. So forget about Word documents, PDF documents, and we are making a lot of efforts in order to make a conversion of our solutions, to provide digital solutions to the market. In this respect, the cooperation of the 3 European standards organizations, CENELEC and ETSI, is essential. And we have got the digital transformation for industry, but we also have the digital transformation of the European standardization system. So in the first chapter, there are many standards that are currently being developed as far as possible in close cooperation or even at international level. Cybersecurity, I will not elaborate on that. I think we heard also before, extremely important to consider the cybersecurity. And I think in particular, when we talk about industrial data, the data flow, it is, I fully support also, I think it was Christian that mentioned that share your data. This is important to enable innovation because we are dealing now with the challenge of cross-fertilization, and this is the only way to innovate. At the same time, it is also very important that we are able to secure intellectual property rights of companies, and standards can really help to do that and to prevent and mitigate cyber attacks. Artificial intelligence, another area in which SENEN and ELEC are developing standards. Many of them actually come from the international level, but there are a few examples that are very interesting on artificial intelligence in the machinery sector. This physical and virtual world are converging, and this is a challenge for us too while developing standards. We need to ensure interoperability, and we need to ensure also security by design. So very big challenges with a lot of experts motivated to work. And maybe I should say that in the first question, it's true that standardization was not the most popular reply, but it was the second, very close to the first one. So it means that industry feels there is a need to have standards that can enable interoperability, but also that can enable a trust in the market. So some challenges in the digital transformation, horizontal versus technical standards. So we are very used to working silos. And I mentioned the cross-fertilization, the intertwine between the digital and the physical world. Industry automation is extremely important. And there are several standards in that respect, but yet there is fragmentation, and we need to continue encouraging sectors to work together to develop standards for the digital transformation. Do we have digital ready legislation? This is a question mark that I open. So we are making a lot of efforts to have digital solutions, not only machine readable, but machine interpretable standards. And we are working now on several pilot projects in that respect, but is our legislation ready to accept these kind of digital solutions, and more in particular in the concept of standards supporting European policies and legislation? I think this is a very interesting debate. And finally, the digital transformation of the standards themselves, where I can elaborate later, but we have got a lot of, in particular, three main projects. One is mentioned machine interpretable standards. Another one is open and online collaboration, so that we modernize the process in which the standards are developed to make them more agile and more dynamic. And there is another one that is related to open source standardization that it is also extremely interesting for some specific sectors. So with that, CECIMO Strategy 2030, very ambitious objectives. And I trust that the mechanical, the machinery sector is going to continue engaged, because we need standards to make the European economy green, digital, and sustainable with resilience. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Elena Santiago Cid, for walking us through those issues that cut across everybody in industry, from companies to regulators to customers. In a minute, we're going to open it up a little bit. I'm going to talk to each of the panelists a bit. But before we do that, we're going to look at the results from our final Slido poll. The question was, what should be the major focus of the revised EU industrial strategy? The strong favorite in terms of responses seems to have been empowering SMEs in technology innovation to achieve sustainable growth. So now we're going to run through our panelists again, this time for a brief Q&A, and then after that, we're going to open it up and look at the questions from Slido and some others that you out there have sent in. So, Anne-Marie Sasson, you talked about the ecosystem and partnerships. And I'm curious, how can this approach help address some of the challenges in the European manufacturing industry?
Well, we've heard of the speakers that everyone is, of course, trying to address the challenges they face every day. And at the moment, companies are not yet sharing a lot with other customers. Well, we've heard at least of KUKA, that even within their company, the IT department, it's difficult to work together with other departments, and there's not yet enough sharing of knowledge. Then we've also heard of Trumpf, that they have a different approach. So they work already very closely with their customers. They're building an ecosystem with their companies, with their customers. And that's, of course, very good. And we've also heard the approach of EOS, where they really shared a lot of data. They made additive manufacturing recipes available for others, so that they can also produce the goods which were not or which were not sufficiently available during the crisis. So they had a very open approach to share data with others. But the challenges that we're facing, they are so big that it's very difficult if every company needs to solve them on their own. And also, sometimes they are just not solvable on their own. You cannot become a circular economy only by optimizing every company within the production chain. There needs to be something which is collective. And then I think that is the advantage of the ecosystem approach. There we will not look at only one value chain or one sector, but it will be a bigger grouping of companies that have similar problems, and we will talk with them, understand the issues, try to make what we can do at the European level very targeted support or policy support. We are, of course, also talking with the member states. The member states at this moment, they are preparing their plans for the recovery and resilience facility, and 20% of all those funds should go to digital investments in the country. And those investments should also benefit the different ecosystems. So by having this structuring approach, looking not at single companies, but at groupings of companies, similar problems, I think that will really help to get a common way forward, so that industries step by step will also feel more comfortable to, for instance, start really sharing data with each other, go for the low-hanging fruits, as I've heard somebody say, start with sharing not confidential data, but see what kind of optimizations that can bring. And I really believe that this approach of the ecosystems can help in supporting that process.
Great, thanks for that. Let's hope some of that actually does happen. Going to move now to Marie Langer. EOS, you are a European leader, a global leader. Your father helped get this industry going a couple of decades ago. From your perspective, what can the EU be doing to help the European industry? Many European companies are now acquired by non-European owners. So how to keep Europe at the leading edge of this industry?
Yeah, so thank you for this question. I think it's very relevant. So first of all, I think it's really important to have on a European scale training and education programs which are really focusing on digital skills, additive manufacturing skill sets, to really be able to tap into the full potential of also the digital factories of tomorrow. And of course, we ourselves are constantly building up our training portfolio here. It's called AM Academy, Additive Minds Academy. But I think really looking at this at a broader scale also from the European side, which would be really, really helpful. And we're working on that in Germany already on a national level together with the government. And then I think also what would be really important, have increased public funding for also smaller mid-sized companies to purchase 3D systems, as this adoption to innovation and to innovative manufacturing technologies is always a big stretch, especially for the smaller companies. And I think here they would really benefit. And it could be even also connected for now the manufacturing providers, the manufacturing system providers, having more tailor-made programs and funding programs to look more at the easy-to-use technology here. So also from the governmental side, I think that could be supported. It was said before that easy-to-use is really relevant to drive adoption further. And I think also technology companies need to look into that more and more in the way how they design their tools and their manufacturing capabilities. And then as a last point, I also want to mention that, and I think also the ecosystem approach, which was just mentioned before, fits in here very well. And also looking at this on a collaborative scope is really developing virtual digital inventories and warehouses. We know that there are a lot of assumptions about it, but we estimate that around 10% of all spare parts will be produced with additive manufacturing over the next years. And I see huge potential here also for companies to collaborate, to create, or maybe even have like digital platforms where you can really download your digital twins, making sure you use your digital inventory, you store your digital inventory there. And I think also this has a sustainability effect again, and is helping us to become more digitalized and using digital tools more efficiently in Europe.
Thank you. Those are some nicely specific and tangible suggestions, so one can hope that policymakers hear them and take action on them. Now I'm going to shift to Christian Liedtke. COVID-19 has made the advantages of all this new technology, more tangible than ever. We've got industrial IoT taking over, and it is a really it's a significant shift. But not every manufacturing company has the resources and the same resources to address this. Especially smaller ones don't. How can this be addressed? What needs to be done to help spread the technology across the industrial landscape?
Well, thank you very much. I mean, first of all, let's do a reality check here. I mean, there's a huge gap in between what is available, what is possible, and what is really implemented on the shop floors. I haven't seen many examples yet where shop floor tasks are really managed in a real life production using IoT powered apps. And the reason for this, I mean, we've heard it from the first speakers as well. For sure, those technologies are available, but companies are still struggling in implementing those. Why is that? We have restrictive policies in our companies. We have a lack of budget, definitely. The market is full of vendors with numerous similar solutions and offerings, and it's hard to pick the right one. And each provider is favorizing its own standards. I mean, we are still doing protective business where we try to build borders around the solutions of our companies and try to get everybody on our solution. This is not working. And then, of course, we also have this hurdle of a questionable return on investment. It would be best if I invest in something and it pays back in the next month, which is definitely not going to happen in such a new technology field. So what do we need to do? I mean, first of all, we need to motivate technology providers to agree on standards. If we are speaking all the same language, things will get a lot easier. Then we need to promote collaborative work between companies. We've seen this in this great video of Marie Langer, this next generation additive manufacturing, which is actually a blueprint for the production of the future, which shows how EOS equipment is manufacturing parts. Those parts are then picked up by Swisslog robots. They are taken to the next step where maybe an DMG Mori lace is working on it, and afterwards Trumpf is welding a piece on it or something like this, and the KUKA robot picks it up and puts it on a shelf or something like this. This is what we actually need, and therefore we need to develop strong ecosystems, and politics can help us a lot on developing ecosystems. And last but not least, we somehow need to encourage all the companies in Europe to actually implement this. All the technologies are available. We just have to do it and get to the point to benefit from it.
Thank you very much. That's a pretty clear agenda. So yet more on the to-do list for Europe. Thomas Schneider, skills are central to our recovery from the pandemic, and mastering the green and digital transition, which is quite a lot to do. What skill sets do you think will be required to adapt the workforce to industrial transformation that's already started, and how can companies that don't have in-house capabilities address this?
So thanks for this question. I think it's like the pre-speakers. So it's first of all, AI is only an embedded system, so it's something on top of the things we already have there. And I think that is the first thing we have to start on, that the people don't lose something with digitalization, they will win. So we have to open our facilities, we have to open up the mindsets of our current workforce, that partnership is the next thing where engineering can make the difference. And it's something we have to train, we have to start, we have to align, and we have to accept, everybody has to accept that only the co-creation and the collaboration will drive us in a different speed. And I think the first waves of digitalization before the crisis have been shown that we tried to do digitalization in the mindset we did the successes in the past. So doing our own standards, providing our USPs within this area of digitalization, and it didn't work for anybody. So we have all now the learning period, and we have now the great opportunity to take these lessons learned also on the management level to allow our people to co-create and to drive our products to the next level by integrating standards, integrating partnerships, and accepting that collaboration and ecosystems only bring in circular economy, and nobody can drive his own business without integrating the next process step and the process step before. So it's a new definition of USP by leveraging the network and the ecosystem. And it's the same for the product and the same for the people. So the people have to train their skills that they don't lose, they win if they cooperate with other experts. And the expertise is there. The domain expertise is in all our successful companies. And the talents of the next generation of AI are also in Europe. They are currently studying or shortly before going into the professions. And we have to integrate them in different ways, maybe not as a direct workforce, but maybe as a partner in a startup, and therefore drive our businesses in the future. So it's just like the people before, we have to do it. I think we have to take the lessons learned out of the crisis serious and decide accordingly, and then the future will come.
So skills isn't just about putting people in a classroom, but it's really about a fundamental change in mindset throughout the industry. Now I turn to Elena Santiago Cid. The green and digital transition is a huge challenge that the EU has taken upon itself. How can standards support and help that along?
Yes, thank you for the question. I love this panel because it gives me the opportunity to connect a lot of issues and very important chapters for the standardization community. I would like to say that we need to act fast and together. This is very important also for the standardization. I heard today a lot of encouragement we need to work on standards, we need to use standards. The first objective, strategic goal actually in our strategy is that the European Union and the institutions recognize the strategic value of standards. And industry, while participating in the standards development process, they need to get a return on investment. We heard about the ecosystems. In CECIMO, we have made a mapping of all the standards that are actually supporting the ecosystems. And we need to make sure also that these standards are used in a way that support the cross collaboration and that support the green and the digital transformation. Two, I think, very short-term recommendations or ideas in the way standards can help leverage the potential of the digital and the green transition. The first one, we heard also about, I think it was Anne-Marie that mentioned the Next Generation EU plan, the 750 billion of additional funding that need to be spent between 2021 and 2023 for national projects, where 20% is going to be spent on supporting the digital transition and 40% the green transition. And this is connected with the ecosystems, and standards are connected with the ecosystems. The objective is to strengthen the single market. I understand that the national projects that are going to be submitted are going to take into account how those projects are actually also enhancing and reinforcing the single market. And standards have got a huge role to play in giving evidence of the added value of this national proposal. So this is a very, I think, concrete. I know that the time frame is very short because the member states need to submit the proposal at the latest in April, if I remember well. But standards can really help industry in getting this recognition while contributing to a standardization. There is another important element, and that is, I mentioned, is the strategic recognition, the recognition that standards are extremely important to support the competitiveness of our industry and to support the green and the digital transition, because standards are just not made by someone hidden in a corner. These are developed by European experts that understand the market, understand the technology, and we are making huge efforts in putting together different sectors in order to innovate, because I do believe that this is the best way to generate innovation and to disseminate very fast innovations in the market. But we need really to make sure that the next industrial strategy that is going to be released in the next months, in March, address standardization in the whole value as a strategic support to the green and the digital transition, because industry is making a huge effort, and this is something that needs to get a return. Otherwise, all this encouragement for industry to share their technologies and to contribute to standardization in Europe will not be optimized. And that would be a pity, because we have got around 60,000 experts from companies that are extremely committed to harmonize and to strengthen the single market and to enable access to the global market while respecting the European values. So I think that it is extremely important to get this strategic recognition. Thank you.
Thanks, Eleanor, Santiago, Sid, for tying it all together like that. Having written a bit about standards myself, it really is one of these fields that people outside of industry don't quite understand how fundamental and integral they are to making everything work. So let's hope that it does indeed work. Let's also now hope that our technology works, because we're going to get a little bit more improvisational and open up the Slido questions and toss in a few others and see if we can handle this. So we have, these are the three top questions from our viewers out there. First one is, how do you want to integrate workers in the process of digitalization? For example, job security and upskilling. Another question is how to combine the sharing of data within the ecosystem and the competition between companies, specifically SMEs. And the final question here is, how are you going to coordinate with other regions of the world that are leading on innovation? These are pretty tough questions, and they're big topics. So I'm going to open this up to the panel. This is where it gets exciting to see if we can make this work. Anyone want to take any of these questions? Raise your hand, start speaking. Don't be bashful. Okay, Marie Langer.
So I would just start with the first one and emphasizing what I also wanted to bring across before. I think when you really talk about digital skills and increasing them, when we look at trainings and education programs that we should be offering more intensively, of course, we should be using that for re- and upskilling. So really making sure that we have workforce that is able to learn, to grow, and to also be able to do other jobs. Of course, there are some jobs who will be more will be needed on an academical level. There are other jobs who will be still on the work floor. I think the task will just change. It will be much more having to do with being able to deal with specific apps, with specific data, and observing some systems better. But there's still a long way to go to fully automation. I think it was also said already, there are some great tools, but there is also some very conventional way of working still on the on the shop floors. So I think re- and upskilling is really important, and we should start now to give a perspective to everyone, because this is much more motivational.
Other takers? Yes, Elena.
Yes. Well, I think that I would like to reply, if possible, to two of the questions. The one dealing with the coordination with other regions about leading that are also leading on innovations, and the one on data sharing. In relation to the coordination with other regions, I think I mentioned the importance of international standardization. And this is a beautiful venue and extremely effective venue to share innovations with leading regions in the world, leading countries in the world. I mentioned the CENELEC strong agreements with the ISO and IC, the International Standard Organization, and the International Electrotechnical Committees, where you have US, China, Japan, India, the European countries, and they sit together in order to find an understanding and to reach consensus on the international standards. So again, it is very important to understand the value of this of the standardization to be able also to influence the international developments and the access to other markets. The second question I would like to reply is the one on the sharing data and competition with for SMEs. I think that is a little bit of a more complex one. We are now seeing the development of new legislative initiatives like the data governance regulation, or I understand there will be another one, the data services also. And here I must say that what we are trying to do from the European standards bodies, and in this case, it's a really partnership sense, and like an SC, the three recognized standards bodies, is to look into what is the industry trying to develop in this context. We are engaging now in some informal exchanges with IAX that I think that Thomas mentioned before, also to be able to get the input from industry players, to be able to take into account all the different needs and interests of all the sectors, because here, of course, I'm talking from a purely standardization point of view. We have got a lot of standards from sectors, and then you have got those cloud services or data management infrastructures, and we need to find a compromise in developing standards that can while respecting the competition, and that includes, of course, SMEs, because in the case of CECIMO, we are national delegation principles. So in every country there is a member, and one of their core objectives is really to engage SMEs, to inform SMEs, and to get and hear the needs of the SMEs to move it to the national, European, and international standardization activities. And here again, collaboration, awareness, and be able to create consensus on these very strategic topics is essential. And I do believe that standards can play a very important role in ensuring a level playing field, because it's really that we are being confronted with the unknown in the data economy in that sense. And we believe that there is an important role for standards to make sure that there is fair competition in the market.
Thanks for that. Thomas.
Also, if
maybe to build on that, I would like to emphasize that we have learned for the IoT in the last decade, especially in the last 2 years in the machinery industry, with driving the UMATI, coming from an industry perspective, that we have to consolidate the language for all machines. Now we have to bring this on the next level, which is with Gaia X. We can do, starting from a little bit behind in the feeling, at least, compared to the other regions in the world, we could take this advantage of having it learned in the last 2 years how to establish a standard for the machinery industry, to drive this now on the ecosystem level with Gaia X from Europe, and inviting the other regions to participate, like we did for UMATI, and now it's a standard all over the world. The Chinese, the American, and Japanese, and Asia Pacific all are participating in this unique standard for all machineries. So it's I think we have now the lessons learned, and it's a good starting point, starting from behind and going forward, and inviting the rest to be in this sovereign cloud stack and driving the future of manufacturing.
Christian.
Yeah, I would also like to add to this second question. UMATI is really a great example, because it's a harmonization of, I would say, the language we are speaking. But it doesn't mean that competitors are exchanging data. It just gives the user the possibility to do that, in the shop floor. And we have to get away from this picture that I, as a machine provider, have a component, I have some data on it, and I can sell this data to my customer, and the customer will benefit from it. This is not going to work, because all of our machines are working in complex systems and not isolated for themselves. So if you take the robot, for example, robot data itself is nearly useless. Yes, you can do some maintenance issues on that, or something like this. But you have to look at it in an ecosystem, and you have to exchange the data, for example, with a provider of a welding control, or the provider of the welding gun, air pressure systems, position controls, and things like this. But if you combine those information together, it's still not that you are giving away company secrets, but you have a huge amount of data that you can really use to improve things. And if you bring those companies together, they will always say that there's a huge benefit in knowing special things from someone else. It's not giving away secrets. It's about combining the right information with the right people to achieve major goals. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. I think it's a very good statement. Combining this data to do things you cannot do otherwise. So within the ecosystem, if companies voluntarily contribute to the data to optimize problems they cannot optimize alone, they voluntarily provide the data, but then the benefits of doing that should also be shared among all the companies that are contributing with this data. So there will be new business models appearing in the data economy, which are not existing at the moment. And that is what we should stimulate. And then even the companies, when they do that, they collaborate, they contribute with their data. When they can compete still on other things, on their core business, which they still have. They can still develop some better services specifically tailored to their customers, who they need, who they know better, or anything like that. So competition can remain, but the sharing of data would be to optimize global problems, and then everybody who contributes should also have a share of the benefits.
Thank you all. And while we've been addressing those questions, we got one more question. I think we have just about enough time to very quickly tackle it. And that is, how do we foster digitalization while ensuring digital security? Any takers? Someone, yeah, somebody want to grab? Yes.
I can try, maybe the others jump in. So I think that there are a lot of platform providers for IT security who are taking this issue very seriously. Of course, there will be always issues and anxiety that some might not be secure, but to be honest, I also think that we need to rethink a little bit this concept of security, as I think there are some data where we all are aware and it's totally clear that we are not even allowed by law to share them, and we really need to make this secure, but there are other data where it might not be as critical. So I think there are great solutions out there already who showcase that they have safe spaces. And my opinion is that we have good solutions there already that we can build on.
Christian, I think you had your hand up first.
Okay. Thank you, Marie, for jumping in first. We have to say goodbye to absolute security. This is not going to happen. Of course, there's always a hole in each system that someone might be sneaking in. I mean, we had those terrorists who could control nuclear rockets and things like that. So there will never be absolute security, but we have to work on strategies on what kind of data can we share and where do we have to be aware of special security features. What do we have to keep inside? And then, of course, there are tools and ways to actually protect your knowledge. I'm just thinking of data fragmentation. I mean, sharing data with a cloud system doesn't need to be sending in microseconds all points that you have over to this cloud system. Why not pre-processing data on your edge level and just sending over data into a consolidated cloud system that says, hey, I'm fine, everything's okay. And just if there's relevant data, you can send this over. So I mean, there are strategies how to tackle this topic. You just have to do it smart, and you really have to rethink what do I need and what are information that could also be handled offline.
Thank you for that. And I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I'm glad to see that we've filled our time so informatively, and we've covered so many topics from so many different angles. I would like to thank all the panelists who really brought a lot to the table here. I'd like to thank CECIMO for organizing this panel and for letting us all be part of the EU Industry Days 2021. You've all given me a lot to continue reporting on and writing on. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of the EU Industry Days.